I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this, but here I am. My name's David, and I was married to Lisa for about 5 years. We met during college, hit it off pretty quickly, and everyone told us we looked like the perfect couple. Lisa was beautiful, confident, a little bitchy sometimes, but sharp as hell. I thought we had it all figured out until I started noticing things. Small things at first, you know. She'd be cold or distant more often than not, and she'd lie about where she was going or who she was talking to. At first, I chalked it up to stress or work. She's a marketing executive, always busy, always on her phone. But then I started catching her in little lies, and the more I looked, the more I sensed that something was wrong. One night, I decided to go through her phone after she fell asleep early. Classic move, I know. I wasn't snooping out of distrust. I just wanted to see if she was hiding something. Turns out she was. There were messages, flirty, suggestive texts, about how she missed someone, how she wanted to see him again. I couldn't believe my eyes. The guy was someone I knew, Tom, my best friend since childhood. I saw how she called him babe in one message, and how she said she was so tired of pretending with David. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. All those nights I thought she was working late or out with friends, she was with my best friend. The worst part, I found out she was pregnant too. I don't even know how I missed it. Maybe I was blind, maybe I just didn't want to see it, but there were signs. She was moody, gaining weight in her belly quickly, and she'd lie about how she was feeling. I remember her telling me she was just tired or stressed about work, but she was secretly telling Tom she was ready for the next chapter. That's when I realized she wasn't just cheating. She was planning to leave, and probably with Tom and the kid. The shock hit me like a freight train. I spent days in disbelief, trying to process what I'd seen. I felt betrayed, humiliated, like I wasn't even married to the same woman I'd loved. I started questioning everything: our memories, the vows we took, whether I ever truly knew her at all. That night I confronted her. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I told her what I found, showed her the messages. She just sat there, her face a mask of indifference and annoyance. "You're overreacting," she snapped. "You're just jealous. Tom and I were just friends. You don't know what you're talking about." But I knew better. I saw her lie, saw her try to deny everything, but it was useless. The evidence was right there. Still, she kept lying, twisting her words, making it sound like I was the crazy one. That's Lisa, always the victim, always the one who's right. She told me I was paranoid, that I was imagining things, that I was making a huge deal out of nothing. But I was. I knew she was lying through her teeth. I knew she was pregnant with Tom's child, and she was planning to run away with him. It felt like my world was falling apart. After that confrontation, everything changed. I was angry, hurt, and honestly kind of numb. I couldn't believe how quickly my life had been turned upside down. I kept replaying the moments I saw in those messages, the way she dismissed me like I was nothing, like I was just some obstacle in her new life with Tom. The worst part was knowing she had planned this for weeks, maybe longer. She was so smooth about hiding it, so convincing when she lied. And Tom, my best friend, how could he have done this? How could he betray me like that, knowing how much Lisa meant to me? I decided I couldn't just sit around and do nothing. I needed to figure out what to do next. I felt this burning need for revenge, not just to hurt her, but to make her realize she couldn't get away with destroying everything we had built. I started thinking about ways to make her regret everything she'd done. I didn't want her to run off with Tom and leave me broken. I wanted to make sure she knew she couldn't escape what she'd started. Revenge became this obsession. I couldn't get it out of my head. First, I needed to find out how serious she was about this plan. I started digging through her stuff, going through her emails, her social media accounts. It wasn't long before I found more evidence: hotel reservations under her name for a getaway with Tom, a bank transfer to his account, messages about how they planned to disappear after the wedding. Apparently, she told her friends she was done with me, that I was too boring, too controlling. She wanted freedom, and she'd stop at nothing to get it. I also learned she was already telling her family she was leaving me. I could hear the lies in her voice in those phone calls. That's when I realized that if I wanted to do something about it, I had to act fast. I couldn't let her run away with this kid, with Tom, with my life. But I had to be smart. I didn't want to just blow everything up without a plan. I started working on a revenge scheme that would hit her where it had hurt most: her pride, her reputation, her ability to walk away without consequences. One thing I knew for sure: Lisa was a bitch. She always was, but now I saw the real her, the selfish, manipulative side she tried to hide. She lied about everything, even pretending to be sweet, all the while plotting. Her escape: I knew she thought she had everything under control, but I wasn't going to let her think she could just walk away from me and our life without paying for it. I decided that I'd make her regret ever crossing me, that she'd wish she'd never messed with my head or my heart. I just didn't know yet how I was going to pull it off, but I was determined not to let her get away without some consequences. In the meantime, I started gathering proof of her affair, of her pregnancy. I wanted everything documented: texts, emails, everything I could use. I knew she'd try to deny it, spin some story, but I wanted her to see that I was prepared. That's when I realized this was no longer about saving the marriage. It was about making her pay for all the damage she'd caused. I started planning my next move, figuring out how to turn her world upside down the way she'd done to mine. I started putting my plan into motion the very next day. I didn't want her to see it coming, so I kept my cool, acted like everything was normal, at least on the surface. I went to work, but behind the scenes I was meticulously organizing everything. I printed out every message I found, saved screenshots of her calls with Tom, and even copied some emails. I wanted a trail, proof she couldn't deny. I also contacted a private investigator I knew from a friend of a friend. I needed to know just how far she was willing to go, how deep her lies were, and if Tom was really planning to leave with her. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act of being the perfect, innocent wife. She'd flash that bitchy smile, pretend to be the loving partner, but I could see through it. She was nervous, constantly checking her phone, and I caught her in little slips, like her dropping her phone when she thought I wasn't looking or hurriedly deleting messages when I walked into the room. She was trying to hide the truth, but she was terrible at it. The more she lied, the more determined I became to expose her completely. One evening, I caught her in a big lie. She told me she was going out with her sister, but I saw her car pull into a hotel parking lot downtown. I followed her, staying in the shadows, and watched her go inside. I waited until she was alone in her room, then I slipped in with a spare key I'd taken from her purse. I wanted to see if she was really planning to leave with Tom, if she was pregnant with his kid. What I found was worse than I expected: her suitcase packed, some clothes, and her phone on the bedside table. I grabbed her phone, knowing I'd find proof there, and slipped out before she returned. At night I stayed awake, staring at her phone. I found texts from Tom talking about their future, how they'd leave everything behind and start fresh somewhere else. I also found a message from her indicating she was already measuring her stomach, that she was almost there, and that she was ready to run. That's when I knew for sure she was planning to leave me, pregnant or not. The betrayal hit me again hard. All those years of trust gone in an instant. The next day I confronted her again. I told her I knew everything about her affair, the pregnancy, the plans to run away. I threw the evidence on the table, making sure she saw it all. Her face turned red with anger and panic. She started spinning some bullshit about how I was paranoid, that I was accusing her of things she didn't do. She said I was just jealous because I wasn't enough for her anymore. But I wasn't buying it. I told her she could lie all she wanted, but I had enough proof to drag her through the mud if I needed to. That's when she snapped at me, calling me crazy and possessive, trying to dismiss my concerns. But I could see the fear behind her eyes, and that only made me more determined to follow through with my plan. I knew I had to act fast now. Time was running out, and I couldn't let her slip away with Tom and the kid. I had to make her regret ever crossing me. I started thinking about the final move, the one that would make her pay, not just for cheating, but for destroying everything we had. Her lies had made me realize how much she was capable of, and I wasn't about to let her get away without consequences. I felt a strange mix of sadness and rage, knowing I'd probably lose my marriage, but also knowing I was going to make sure she understood how badly she'd screwed up. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about making her face the reality of what she'd done. The planning took over everything. I stayed up late every night, mapping out my next steps. I knew I had to be careful, any mistake, and she might run off before I had a chance to really make her feel it. I decided to set a trap. I contacted a friend who owed me a favor and had him come by to install a hidden camera in the living room. Not for anything creepy, just enough to catch her in the act or to get proof of her plans. I needed her to know I was watching, to make her think twice about what she was doing. Meanwhile, Lisa's behavior grew more erratic. She was nervous, snapping at me over small things, trying to act like everything was normal but failing miserably. I could tell she was stressed, but she also thought she was so clever, lying, pretending, hiding her tracks. She kept saying she was just confused, that she didn't know what she wanted, that I was overreacting. It all sounded like bullshit to me now. She was hiding her pregnancy from her family, probably because she knew they'd tell her to stop, but she was too deep in her lies. One day I got lucky. She left her phone in the kitchen and I found a message from Tom. It was explicit about their plans, how they'd meet at the airport, how she'd tell her family she was going on a business trip. There was even talk about how she was so ready to start their new life. Seeing that message lit a fire in me. I knew I had to act fast, not just to catch her, but to make sure she'd never be able to deny the truth again. So I called her bluff. That night I told her I knew everything. I showed her the evidence, the texts, the hotel reservations, the bank transfers. Her eyes widened and her face turned pale, but she tried to brush it off. She started with the usual bullshit. How I was paranoid, how Tom was just a friend, that I was imagining things. I cut her off, told her I'd had enough of her lies. I told her I was going to show her just how much I'd uncovered, how deeply she'd screwed up. Her bitchy attitude shifted to panic in an instant. She tried to deny it all, but I was ready. I had recordings of her talking with Tom, her messages, everything. I let her see the evidence I'd collected, and her mask cracked. She looked like a cornered animal. That's when I told her she wasn't going anywhere until we had a serious talk. I couldn't let her run off with Tom, not without making her face what she'd done. I wanted her to understand she was about to lose everything, her marriage, her reputation, her future with Tom and that kid. I wasn't just angry, I was furious. I wanted her to feel the weight of her betrayal, and she did. I saw the realization hit her hard. She tried to manipulate me, crying, begging, lying, anything to get out of it. But I'd already made my decision. I told her she was not going to screw me over and then walk away like nothing happened. If she wanted out, she'd have to face the consequences. I knew I had to be careful. This was just the beginning. I was planning the final act, the one that would make her regret ever crossing me, but for now I just wanted her to see that I was serious, that I wasn't going to be the fool who got played. Not anymore. Over the next few days, I kept everything tight. I didn't let her out of my sight much, and I kept the evidence scattered around in case she tried to deny anything again. I was getting ready for my final move. I knew she was planning to leave soon, probably within a week, and I wasn't going to let her take that kid away without a fight. I also arranged to meet with a lawyer, just to understand what my rights were, and how I could make her see this wasn't going to be a clean breakup. I wanted her to feel the chaos coming, to realize she couldn't just run from the truth. Meanwhile, Lisa's attitude shifted from bitchy and manipulative to outright frantic. She started panicking, snapping at me over small things, and I could see the cracks in her veneer. She was trying to keep up her lies, but it was obvious she was losing control. She kept insisting that it was all a mistake, that she never meant to hurt me, even though her words sounded hollow, desperate. She kept saying she loved me, that she was sorry, but I wasn't buying her bullshit anymore. I was past caring about her excuses. All I wanted was for her to understand that she'd crossed the line, and now she'd have to pay. One night I decided to confront her one last time before I made my move. I told her I knew about everything, about her affair, the pregnancy, the plans to run away. I laid it all out clearly right there in the living room. Her face twisted in anger and fear. She tried to spin some new story, claiming Tom was just a stupid mistake, that she was confused, that she didn't want to hurt me. But I cut her off. I told her I'd already seen enough, that I'd recorded her talking with Tom, that I had all the proof I needed. I told her she had to face the music now, that there was no way out. Her reaction was classic. She started crying, begging me not to ruin her life, saying she'd do anything to fix it, but I knew better. I told her I wasn't interested in her apologies or her lies anymore. All I wanted was for her to understand that her choices had consequences. I warned her she wasn't going anywhere until I was ready, that I'd make sure she paid for what she'd done. That night, she looked defeated, like she finally realized the game was over. I felt a strange mixture of relief and anger. Relief because I finally had her cornered, and anger because I never thought I'd be in this position, fighting to keep my wife, my family, from slipping away with the guy who was supposed to be my best friend. I knew she was planning to leave in the next few days. I also knew I had to act fast, so I arranged everything to make sure she couldn't escape without facing the fallout. I contacted her family, told them the truth, and warned her that I was prepared for whatever she tried. I set up security cameras around the house so I could keep an eye on her movements. I was ready to confront her at the airport, at the hotel, wherever she thought she could run to. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about making sure she understood she wasn't going to get away with destroying my life without paying a price. In this moment, I realized what truly hurt the most wasn't just the betrayal or the fact she was pregnant with Tom's kid. It was the fact that she'd lied to me for so long, manipulated everyone around her, and made me feel like I was crazy. But I also knew this was the end of the line. I'd fought hard, and I was ready to make her regret she ever crossed me. Whatever happened next, I was done being the victim. I was going to take control and make sure she understood the consequences of her actions. The day she planned to leave, I was already waiting at the airport. I had everything set up, hidden cameras, my phone recording, and a police officer on standby just in case. Her face was a mixture of defiance and panic as she saw me there, luggage in hand, her eyes darting around trying to find a way out. I could see the moment she realized she wasn't going anywhere without facing what she'd done. I stepped forward, calm but firm, and told her it was over, that she wasn't going to run away with Tom and the kid, not without consequences. She screamed, called me crazy, said I was ruining her life, but I just shook my head. I told her she had no one to blame but herself, that her lies, her manipulations, and her betrayal had led us here. I played back the recordings on my phone for her to hear, the messages, the plans, her own voice admitting everything in her desperation. Her face crumpled as she realized she'd been caught completely off guard. I handed her the divorce papers, told her to sign them there and then, and made it clear that I wasn't going to let her destroy what was left of my dignity. The police stepped in as she tried to fight me, screaming about how I was ruining her life, but I didn't care. I just wanted her out of my sight, out of my life, and to know she'd finally been exposed for the lying, manipulative bitch she really was. As she signed the papers, I saw the tears streaming down her face, and for the first time I felt nothing but a cold relief. It was over. The nightmare was finally ending. In the aftermath, I moved out of the house, started therapy, and tried to piece my life back together. The pain of betrayal still lingers, but I've come to accept that some people are just toxic, and no matter how much you love them, they can destroy everything if you let them. I cut ties with Tom completely. No contact, no second chances. I learned that trust is fragile, and once broken, it's almost impossible to fix. But I also learned that revenge, while bitter, can sometimes give you the closure you need to move on. Looking back, I see how naive I was to think I had a perfect marriage. Lisa was never who I thought she was. Her bitchy attitude, her lies, her manipulations, they all showed me her true colors. And Tom, he was just as guilty. I don't regret exposing the truth, even if it hurt. I'd rather face the pain now than live a lie forever. I've realized that some betrayals are so deep they redefine everything you thought you knew about love and loyalty. Now I'm rebuilding. I trust again cautiously, but I'm stronger for having gone through this. I hope anyone reading this who's in a similar situation knows that you're not alone. It hurts, but you can survive it. And sometimes the only way to truly move on is to face the betrayal head-on, no matter how messy or painful it gets. That's how you take back control of your life. That's how you heal.